Life Audio.
The Bible Study Podcast, episode 899. Today, the Bible Study Podcast continues the study of the intertestamental period and the book of 1st Maccabees with chapter 10. Welcome to the Bible Study Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. We continue on with chapter 10 with a new problem in the area. A new civil war breaks out. But first, a word from this sponsor. Chapter 10 starts this way: the revolt of Alexander Epiphanes. And before I start reading it, let's put this in a little bit of context. You may remember that when we started this particular study, the ruler in Syria who caused all the problems was Antiochus Epiphanes. Technically, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Alexander Epiphanes is his son. Now, the trick there is that many people considered that when Antiochus accepted the throne or took the throne, that he was a usurper because Demetrius was the young son of his predecessor. Demetrius was too young, and so he took over, wasn't reigning in Demetrius's name. He actually became king. So Demetrius, in this meantime, has come back and taken the throne from one of his other sons. But now another son of Antiochus Epiphanes comes back, and we have a problem. There's one throne and two people who want to sit on it. Revolt of Alexander Epiphanes. In the 160th year, Alexander Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, landed and occupied Ptolemais. They welcomed him, and there he began to reign. When King Demetrius heard of it, he assembled a very large army and marched out to meet him in battle. Demetrius sent Jonathan a letter in peaceable words to honor him, for he said to himself, "Let us act first to make peace with him, before he makes peace with Alexander against us. For he will remember all the wrongs that we did to him and to his brothers and his nation." So Demetrius gave him authority to recruit troops, to equip them with arms, and to become his ally, as he commanded that the hostages in the citadel should be released to him. Then Jonathan came to Jerusalem and read the letter in the hearing of all the people and those in the citadel. They were greatly alarmed when they heard that the king had given him authority to recruit troops. But those in the citadel released the hostages to Jonathan, and he returned them to their parents. And Jonathan took up residence in Jerusalem and began to rebuild and restore the city. He directed those who were doing the work to build the walls and encircle Mount Zion with squared stones for better fortification, and they did so. Then the foreigners who were in the strongholds that Maccabees had built fled. All of them left their places and went back to their own lands. Only in Beth Zur did some remain who had forsaken the law and the commandments, for it served as a place of refuge. Now King Alexander heard of all the promises that Demetrius had sent to Jonathan, and he heard of the battles that Jonathan and his brothers had fought, of the brave deeds they had done, and of the troubles they had endured. So he said, "Shall we find another such man? Come now, we will make him our friend and ally." And he wrote a letter and sent it to him with the following words. I'm going to pause before we get to those words. Basically, there are two rivals for the throne of Syria: the son of Antiochus Epiphanes and the son of the person who preceded him. And so both of them look at the Maccabees at this point, look at the Jews and say, these people have been a problem. They've been so hard to fight. We'd rather have them as our ally than be fighting, than have them go over to the other side and become their ally. And so both of them are trying to woo Jonathan to be their ally. Now, Demetrius has a problem, of course, that he was part of the problem. Alexander Epiphanes doesn't have that problem, except that his father had been such a problem. So it's just a question of which of these two will Jonathan trust. Now, Demetrius, you'll notice, still had troops within Judea. So even though Bacchides had signed a peace treaty that he would never come back, there were still people, for instance, in the citadel. That citadel we keep talking about, that fortress in Jerusalem just south of the Temple Mount in the city of David. And there were still hostages in that place and in other places. So children of the nobility of Judea who were being held hostage in case anything were to happen, war were to break out again. And so Demetrius, wanting to make the peace more peaceful, tells the people in the citadel to let them all go. And they do. And also at that point, many of the Syrians, or I'm going to call them Assyrians, they're really Macedonians or Greek people who have come in and are in charge of the country of Syria at the time, they go home. They don't want to be here anymore. They don't have the hostages, so it's not quite as safe, but also there's trouble brewing, so they have to kind of pick a side. So at this point, they had probably to either where Alexander is ruling, which is in Phoenicia, or to where Demetrius is ruling. And then we get back to that letter. He wrote and sent to him a letter in the following words. Jonathan becomes high priest. King Alexander, to his brother Jonathan, greetings. We have heard about you, that you are a mighty warrior and worthy to be our friend. And so we have appointed you today to be the high priest of your nation. You are to be called the king's friend, and you are to take our side and keep friendship with us. He also sent him a purple robe and a golden crown. So Jonathan put on the sacred vestments in the 7th month of the 160th year at the festival of booths, and he recruited troops and equipped them with arms in abundance. When Demetrius heard of these things, he was distressed and said, "What is this we have done? Alexander has gotten ahead of us in forming a friendship with the Jews to strengthen himself. I will also write them words of encouragement and promise them honor and gifts so that I may have their help." He sent a message to them in the following words. It's the second letter here as they're trying to woo Jonathan. A letter from Demetrius to Jonathan. King Demetrius, to the nation of the Jews, greetings. Since you have kept your agreement with us and have continued your friendship with us and have not sided with our enemies, we have heard of it and rejoiced. Now continue still to keep faith with us, and we will repay you with good for what you do for us. We will grant you many immunities and give you gifts. I now free you and exempt all the Jews from payment of tribute and salt tax and crown levies. And instead of collecting the third of the grain and the half of the fruit of the trees that I should receive, I release them from this day and henceforth. I will not collect them from the land of Judah and from the 3 districts added to it from Samaria and Galilee, from this day and for all time. Jerusalem and its environs, its tithes and its revenues shall be holy and free from tax. I release also my control of the citadel in Jerusalem and give it to the high priest, so that he may station in it men of his own choice to guard it. And every one of the Jews taken as captive from the land of Judah into any part of my kingdom I set free without payment, and let all officials cancel also the taxes on their livestock. All the festivals and Sabbaths and new moons and appointed days and the 3 days before a festival and the 3 days after a festival, let them all be days of immunity and release for all the Jews who are in my kingdom. No one shall have authority to exact anything from them or trouble any of them about any matter. Let the Jews be enrolled in the king's forces to the number of 30,000 men, and let the maintenance be given them that is due to all the forces of the king. Let some of them be stationed in the great strongholds of the king, and let some of them be put in positions of trust in the kingdom. Let their officers and leaders be of their own number, and let them live by their own laws, just as the king had commanded in the land of Judah. As for the 3 districts that have been added to Judah from the country of Samaria, let them be annexed to Judea, so that they may be considered to be under one ruler, and obey no other authority than the high priest. Ptolemais and the land adjoining it I have given as a gift to the sanctuary in Jerusalem to meet the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. I also grant 15,000 shekels of silver yearly out of the king's revenues from appropriate places, and all the additional funds that the government officials have not paid as they did in the first years, they shall give from now on for the service of the temple. Moreover, the 5,000 shekels of silver that my officials have received every year from the income of the services of the temple, this too is canceled, because it belongs to the priests who minister there. And all who take refuge in the temple in Jerusalem or in any of its precincts, because they owe money to the king or are in debt, let them be released and receive back all their property in my kingdom. Let the cost of rebuilding and restoring the structures of the sanctuary be paid from the revenues of the king, and let the cost of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and fortifying it all around, and the cost of rebuilding the walls in Judea also be paid from the revenues of the king. Now, that's a lot. I can't even summarize all the different things that Demetrius is offering. I would say from this, it looks like Demetrius is running scared. When the king says, I'm going to give up all tax revenue from you forever, one, they may take that back sometime, but two, they're kind of expecting that forever may not last that long, that they may be in a world of hurt. And so they promise all sorts of things, all of the captives released. That citadel that has been a thorn in the side of the Judeans will now be a Judean stronghold. That they basically endorse also Jonathan as high priest, or at least they don't say that Alexander doesn't have the right to set him as high priest, and they put additional lands under the authority of the high priest. And they do all sorts of really wonderful things. We really want to be your friend. You have been so good to us. We appreciate that you have not gone over to our enemy. Well, that doesn't last all that long. Death of Demetrius. When Jonathan and the people heard these words, they did not believe or accept them, because they remembered the great wrongs that Demetrius had done in Israel and how much he had oppressed them. They favored Alexander because he had been the first to speak peaceable words to them, and they remained his allies all his days. Now King Alexander assembled large forces and encamped opposite Demetrius. The two kings met in battle, and the army of Demetrius fled. And Alexander pursued him and defeated them. He pressed the battle strongly until the sun set, and on that day Demetrius fell. And so Demetrius, who has been a problem ever since he came back from being in exile in Rome, is dead. And Alexander, the son of the guy who caused the problems in the first place, is in charge. Alexander Epiphanes. We'll see how that goes, but not today. With that, we're going to end this episode of the Bible Study Podcast. If you have any questions, send an email to host@thebiblestudypodcast.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at thebiblestudypodcast.com. And thanks so much for listening. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Has fear stolen your peace? I'm Jennifer Slattery, lead host of the Faith Over Fear podcast, helping you fight your fears and grow your faith. Subscribe at lifeaudio.com.